All right. So this panel is on advice to aspiring developers. And even though the term is developers, I'm going to assume that includes other roles, like artists and those sorts of things. So I'll try to prompt some pearls of wisdom directly from you guys, but I'm also going to try to talk about the problems we deal with and the sorts of people that are helpful to have on the team, in the hopes that that can sort of lead people to infer the wisdom from it. And I'll ask you guys questions. I'll throw out a bit of a prompt for you, and we'll see how it goes.
Awesome.
All right. So first things first, we should do some introductions. I'll start real quick. My name's Dave Wightman. I have a company called Reclamation Games I started, and we're working on a game called Reina and Jericho. Sadie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi. So I'm Sadie Jarvis. I'm the marketing and community director at Gerdoo Games, and we're making Republic of Jungle, which is a social deduction game played kind of in the style of a Jackbox type. So it's very accessible for lots of people. And yeah, I'm really excited to do this.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Amico Ricardo. I'm the co-founder and the main developer of the game of Grid Force Mask of the Goddess. And yeah, sorry, I'm a bit tired, to be honest, because here in UK is like 1 o'clock in the morning. So it's just for that. But yeah, it's nap time, definitely. But yeah, just that.
Well, I'll check in to make sure you're awake from time to time.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tristan. I am lead developer on the game Kind Folks. That's hopefully coming out next year. I do a little bit of everything. I'm currently the lead and only programmer on the game. And I also made a game before that called Don't Give Up, where I did some more art, design, writing. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Cool. Let's go around. We'll start with you again, Tristan. How did you get started in this? So you were born, you were given standard education, and then at some point you became a game developer. How did it happen?
My answers, full disclosure, may be a little unorthodox, but I do think that the best thing for me being a part of this panel is just to be fully transparent and honest about my experiences. You guys may have completely different experiences. My journey with game development started with a fairly tumultuous career path that I found myself not having enough experience to do anything I wanted to do in the corporate industry, knowing I had the drive and skill. So I just kind of got tired of going nowhere in corporate and just decided to prove that I could make a game on my own. And then I did. So I do think I would have taken a different path had things played out differently. But my story with how I got started in game development was kind of more of one where my back was kind of against the wall and I didn't like any of my other options. So I just decided to go for it.
And when you say you started in a corporate environment, was that still in the games industry, or were you doing programming in a totally different industry, or completely unrelated?
Yeah, I was in the game industry. I was a tester for like 2 years, and then the company kind of fizzled out, and people only wanted me to be a tester, and I was kind of done being a tester. So after pretty much being told by the corporate world, like, we're not letting you do anything else, I just kind of said, well, I am going to do something else, and just kind of did it.
Nice. Good for you. All right, Ricardo, tell us your story.
Yeah, so as you said, for most of us, we finished the school, and after that, when we were thinking what to do in our life, and for me, was not making games, to be honest. Was one of my dreams since I was young, but my dream at that time was more becoming a football player, to be honest. And I spent a bit of my time trying to do that, but then I realized that I was like spending too much time in something that was not my real dream. So I went back to my original dream, that was making games, and I started study by myself without any having any degrees or whatever. So I started by myself. I learned Unity. I learned how to code in C#, and from that moment on, I just tried to enter the industry. At that time, I was still in Italy, and was quite hard, to be honest, because the environment in Italy, if you're not in a big city, is very different than here in UK. And that was probably the hardest part for me, was trying to enter put the first step in the industry. But I was so lucky that I found this company, that is Italian company, that was in Spain at that moment, and they hired me. They decided to give me this opportunity just because I was trying to show them that even if I didn't have enough knowledge, maybe at the time, I would study even 24 hours a day just to have the chance for me to enter in this industry. And they decided to point on me. And luckily, after 1 year working with them, I went back to Italy and I came here in London. And a few months after, I was even luckier to find my co-founder, Dan Bernardo, that was doing with Nicola Strina the speech before. And we create our company it was Playtra, and now is coming as a Dreamnaut studio. And and after that, we just decided to do our game, Grid Force. And here we are.
So how long were you not on the track you wanted to be on then? Like how many years? Because some people, their path will be, finishing high school or secondary school, doing university, getting the degree, and then getting an entry-level position in your profession at the game studio, or a game studio you apply to. Maybe not the one of your dreams, but that's sort of on paper the route you should take, and yours is not that. So I want to know, like, how many years were you sort of wandering before you started making headway on games?
So let's say I finished the high school at 18. I did 1 year of uni, and then I just quit, and I went back studying Unity. I was 24.
Okay.
So quite a bit of time of this. 4 or 5 years for sure that I spent doing something else. But I have to say that time was like gold, because I realized so much more which one was my dream, because I was following something that was for me important. That was what I thought was my dream. But then I realized, yes, I can still do it, but I think this is not going to give me the same happiness that I will have doing games. And then I just decided to switch.
Interesting. How about you, Sadie? Tell us your story.
They're kind of similar. I've been a gamer for like my whole life, and I always wanted to go into gaming, but I am from the generation who didn't get taught to code in school, and I had no idea how to do it. Excuse me. So I actually ended up going into teaching instead, and I was a teacher for 6 years in total, and then unfortunately, I have a disability. It progressed, and as I taught drama, I couldn't run around the room like a headless chicken anymore. So I had to leave that profession, and I just decided, you know what, there must be something I can do in the games industry, even if I can't code. And looked for ways to get in. Decided that community management would be a good place to start because I chat a lot. I'm good with people. And I decided to get a year's worth of experience under my belt before applying to get into the industry. So I found a community that didn't have any kind of leadership, and kind of built the community for PlayStation Access, which is the official PlayStation YouTube channel in the UK. They had a great community, but they only existed in the YouTube comments section. So I built a Discord server for them, ran Twitter and all different sorts of socials, and basically just got a year's worth of experience on my CV. And then applied for jobs in the indie sector because I am very firmly in the camp that the indie scene is where all the most exciting things are happening in gaming. It's where I want to work. I couldn't imagine working for a AAA studio. And I ended up getting my first job in the industry at a indie publisher, Untold Tales, who are based in Poland, as a community manager. And I did that for a year. And then I decided that I didn't like the environment of a publisher because I wanted to give everything I could to the games. And because I had to work on 4 or 5 games at a time, I felt like I couldn't do that. So I looked to move to a studio, found Gerdoo Games, and I'm now literally doing the job of my dreams and have to pinch myself quite a lot to make sure it's all real, basically. But yeah, that's me.
I think it's interesting. None of us, took we'll call it the traditional approach, or what you would consider the normal. Because for me, I had kind of a similar experience to you guys, where I did go to university and I did finish, but I switched faculties 4 or 5 times, and I ended up with a general science major. But I had the experience of, when I was in arts, I wanted to be doing science, and when I was in sciences, I wanted to be doing more arts, and there was no balance. And video games are one of the few industries where there is actually a really nice balance between the two, and there's constant communications between those sorts of people. And I've been a lifelong gamer and kind of talked myself out of going into game. After working for 10 years, kind of 5 as a graphic designer and about another 5 or 6 as a senior developer, I quit my job about 2.5 years ago and started a game development studio, which, as it turns out, like, sort of all of us were on somewhat of a different path and had to basically break away from it and go our own way. So it'll make for some interesting advice for aspiring game developers.
What are the chances? Yeah.
But I mean, if you know what you want, that's the end of the discussion, right? Like, nothing else will work. A hypothetical question for all of you. Actually, you know what? We got a couple in the chat. I'm going to try to bounce to some of them rather than my list. I'll try to prioritize them. So if someone was going to take not go the artistic branch, so this isn't going to be some 3D modeler or a concept artist or anything. They're asking, what entry-level positions should I look at, and what sort of skills should you look at? I'm going to push back on that a bit and first ask you guys, do you think that's the right question?
Because I kind of did this and didn't go in on the sort of development side of things, the way that I look at it is looking at the skills you already have, whether that's from going to university and studying something in the game industry, or like the 4 of us doing something else. You will have skills that land firmly in a particular position within the industry, and I would research and find out what that is first, because you might have an idea of what you want to do, but actually find out that you're really talented at or like being very organized, and you're good at communicating and liaising with people, and find that actually, you know what, I could go in as a producer and that would really suit me. But you've got to look at you rather than the job, I think, in that, if that makes sense.
What do you think, Tristan? This is kind of relevant for you because you did have, like, this person was sort of like, should I go enter through QC? What do you think of that, knowing your experience?
I think everyone's experience is different. I could say I don't think I have like a lot of optimistic answers. I think the job market is going to look different depending on where you are. I don't know where this person is based out of, if they're willing to like travel, but also if you're not in a city where there are more opportunities, it kind of works against you. So there are a lot of outside things to consider. I would say if your focus is to get a leg in the corporate door and not be indie, I mean, despite this working against me, if you are able and you don't have all of the skills together yet, because it sounds like they're trying to maybe get a trajectory on what path they should take, you should actually maybe try and get a tester job. They're pretty easy to get. They don't need you to have experience, but you can build rapport in a company, or at least just have a game company on your resume, and you can talk to people at the studio. This is something that I didn't do during my time as a tester. I probably should have. Show people that you're interested, ask them what they did, what path they took. I think it sounds like this panel of people are all based in different locations, so I think that's really important to consider. And I mean, unless this person has followed my exact geographic footnote, it's going to be really hard for me to, hone in on that. But location is important. If you really want it, I would say definitely be like, I'm not going to say all you have to do, but if you're passionate and you can project that passion, you can start as a tester while building up your skills, and that's only helping you out. I would say art is really competitive. I wanted to be an artist, and technology is a competitive field, but I would say art is one of the more competitive aspects of it. So maybe you could even consider being a level modeler, like a designer. So you're sort of like mapping out levels, but you're sort of getting that little bit of creativity out. Yeah, I think it will also give you like skills in both columns. So it's a little bit of like design and a little bit of you still being able to get out that artistic energy.
Ricky, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I agree with both of them. So definitely there are two different things that you can do. One is entering a big corporate, and one is entering a studio, a small studio, indie studio like us, for example. If you want to go in a big corporate, definitely if you have a degree, if you have small projects that you can show what you can do, will give you more help in trying to enter. But if you go in a small studio, like for example, as I said, us studios of 15 people maximum, I think your knowledge is something that you're gonna build with time. So if you are a junior, I think no one is gonna expect you to go there and be the best junior ever, even if maybe you are, because of course people are incredible. There's nothing I can say there. But no one is expecting you to be as the same level of the other. So you can build your knowledge, but if you show them that you're willing to learn, that you're willing to move, for example, there are people that we asked to come here in London and they said, I cannot, can we do that remotely? At the time before Corona, for us was like, we have a studio, why I should have you just remotely come here? And they said no. So all of this will give you way more chances to enter in a small studio. And of course, as I said, if you're willing to learn and you're willing to show them all of this, they will accept you, because in studios, small studios, you are not just a single developer. You don't do just coding. You will help in so many different stuff. If you are an artist, for example, you are a 3D artist, you can move from that on to become a concept designer, maybe for a couple of sketches, because they need in that moment someone that does that. So maybe you can understand that maybe 3D is not your future, but maybe concept art is going to be the next one, or maybe you pass from 3D to animation because, of course, you don't have all the people, all the asset in the moment for the game. So you just move and you can just pass between different patterns, and then you can understand a bit better also what you want to do. But definitely knowledge for small studios, for me at least, is less than the person in itself. So I prefer to have someone that gives all itself or all herself to the project than someone that is very good and then hypothetically works from 9 to 5. And if we need to do a build for many reasons, we need someone that needs to help us for 2 hours more, just leave the company. And it's something that for small studios doesn't really work well, to be honest. For big companies, of course, is what they expect, so it's okay.
I totally agree with the fact what you said at the beginning there is if you want to work in the indie space, be prepared to wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
Because you will definitely be doing more than one thing. So don't go in thinking this is what I want to do, this is all I want to do in the indie space. It just won't work. You will have to do loads of things, and it's great because, like Ricky said, you might actually find that you're brilliant at something you hadn't even considered before because you got that chance in the indie space. So yeah, great point.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to bring up a couple of different ideas connected to that, because I think that's a very specific question that it started with. Like, what coding and engine skills would you be looking for? Like, should I learn C# in Unity, or should I learn C++ on Unreal? And I think wrong way of looking at it, because studios like having people who already know. If it's an Unreal studio and you know Unreal, that's a point in your favor. However, if they like you, if you really win them over, if they like your experience, if they think you can play well with the team, they won't really care if you know C# instead. And your ability to cooperate is far more important. That's thing one to keep in mind. The other catch is, if you go the contractor route, for example, for artists is a big thing. Like, a lot of artists are available for contract work, and for it's only your portfolio, and it's only just how well known you are and everything. It's if you have a strong ArtStation portfolio, that is worth more than anything else combined. You don't have to just get too caught up in, like, developing these specific skills. I had one really good professor in university who mentioned the idea of human capital, which is, if you think about yourself before you go into university, you have no debts maybe, and you have none of these things, but you also don't really know anything. When you come out the other side, you might have all these liabilities in terms of student loan debt or whatever. And this doesn't have to be a university education situation. This could be you pounding out 3 little game jam projects with you and a friend, or like, it could be anything, right? But these things are investments in your human capital. You can't spend it like money, but it makes you someone worth hiring. So I think, like, the most important thing is just turn yourself into someone they can't say no to. What you're good at, that's what you have to discover and cultivate. There are studios who are looking for artists, and there are studios who are looking for programmers, and studios who are looking for QAs. And there's no shortage of people who are looking for good stuff. You have to get found by them, and that's really all there is to getting hired, right? A philosophical question for all of you guys. If you could add one person to your team right now, would you rather add just a specialist or a generalist? You're up, Ricky. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
You're up, Sadie. Specialist in what?
In our team in particular, I would add a specialist in animation, because we are about to do brand new animations for our stuff, and we're a very small team. So yeah, that would be good.
And is that the sort of problem you would, not that you're necessarily like in charge of hirings, but like, is that a problem your studio would solve with like a contractor to like come work with you guys for a year or something? Or is it something you would hire a full-time animator just to like fill the gap in the studio completely?
So at the moment, it would be contractor. But that's because of the stage we're at as a company. We're relatively new. We've been around for 2 years. And our game isn't out yet, so but we want to build the team in the near future as a full-time team. But yeah, so for now, contractor, but not forever.
Yeah, and this is me being a little presumptuous, but if you found an animator and they were a good fit and it worked well in the contract, that would probably be a pretty good start for any expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing that people are immediately put off by being a contractor. They want like a full-time job, but actually a lot of the game industry is getting your foot in the door, getting to know the people, making sure you fit in, and then they hire you. Like, it's networking in this industry is very important, and contract work is a way to do that. And make the most of it when you do it. Every time you've got a contract and you go and work in a different team, get to know that team. Like, don't just do your job and hand it in. Network, because it's so important. I went on a tangent, but yeah.
I think that was a valuable thing to add, and that's been my experience as well. Is when we think of networking, a lot of the time people think like, going to the bar after PAX and mingling with the other devs and everything. But that's not really been my experience. It's like, yeah, you do a little contract, you meet someone, you help them out with something, they help you out with something, and it's like that relationship is the networking. And if they think like, oh my goodness, this person's great, that's how they tell their friend about you, and their friend has a problem you can solve, and like that's how it actually disseminates. Because I don't know, the games industry, it's not like business school where all the devs are going out and like just having these parties or whatever. Like, it's very work centric. The fact is, we're all working overtime.
Yeah, and then when we're not, we're playing games inside on our own, not talking to anybody. So, we're a different crowd of people, definitely.
I would also take a specialist. I worked on my first game for 4 years, learning the ropes, and I had to wear a lot of hats. I feel very comfortable at this point doing that. But as they beat the old saying, jack of trades, master of none. I am pretty good at some things, but I am not, when you have to wear a lot of hats, you have to spread yourself thin. I mean, there's only so many hours in a day. So I would definitely always want someone who has spent all their days doing one thing. I have a lot of respect for that kind of determination and would always go for the specialist.
All right, Ricardo, specialist or generalist, who are you adding to the team?
Good question. So in this moment, probably none of them, because we are at the end of the project and it will take so much time just to show them the project and teach them what they have to do. That probably is going to be better if in the next couple of months we just finish it. But if I have to think for the future, I would like to have a specialist as a coder, because I'm the only coder. And in this case, I would like to learn from someone that knows more than me, way more than me, if it's possible, so that I can grow. So it's very egoistic, but at the same time, I know that if I grow, the company grows. So is a kind of giving
a great
50-50.
answer.
Thank you.
And you just brought up something really interesting. At my previous job, I had a friend who I met as a student when I went to talk to some university students, and I sort of identified him as like, oh man, that kid would be awesome. And we got him hired, and he was awesome. And that almost became a problem because we didn't have enough senior programmers to like help him, like keep pushing him. And he's working for some sort of Amazon sub company now. But there is tremendous value in, if you have employees at intermediate level, having advanced ones they can learn from is important. Usually when someone becomes really advanced at a subject, I think they are comfortable like transitioning to more of a teaching role. But if you have people at the beginning, they can sort of get better through practice. But at a certain level, you need to basically have a coach, and that's where the specialists have a lot of value. And that kind of ties into the human capital thing we were talking about earlier, where it's like, become great at something. And if it's a skill in need for the gaming industry, they'll find you and they'll want you.
Yep, I agree 100%.
Sadie, what has been the biggest waste of time in your career?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I think I learned a lot working in the publishing place. I did really learn a lot. I was thrown into the fire and literally wore every single hat you could possibly wear. But I very quickly didn't like having to split myself, and I wish I had gone into a studio instead of a publisher straight away, I think. So kind of choosing the wrong path as an entry point, I think, for me, was that. But it was still valuable,
Yeah, I think about that too. I loved games my whole life and worked in a different industry, again, doing graphic design and coding. Well, I'd sort of convinced myself I wanted to do something else, and eventually it just bugged me so much I had to quit, or else I was going to go insane. But the amount I learned then that time was helpful. So from one point of view, it was a huge waste of time, but I mean, like, the man I came out was not the same who went in, and
yeah,
I knew way more and was better at way more things and had learned from, dozens of really brilliant people. So it all became helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, so Naomi asked a question about something you didn't think you would like, but you ended up loving, and that job, I went into it begrudgingly having to do a bunch of graphic design, because I never thought I'd be able to do that well. I'm not an artist. I could draw a stick figure and that's it. So in my head, I was like, I'm never going to enjoy this. I'm not going to do very well. Now it's one of my favorite parts of the job. I had to learn very quickly, very, very quickly. Blessed to who was my boss at the time, a gentleman called Pavel Skava. He taught me all about graphic design in a very short space of time, and now I love it. It's like one of my favorite things. So yeah, it everything you do is valuable in some way, and I think it's better to look at it like that than to look at it as a waste of time. Positive spin.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to say I don't consider any of it a waste of time. Like, I feel like if you're in a position where you're trying to, the only time I feel when I'm wasting time is when I know I have things to do and I just choose not to do them. But everything else in my life, while sometimes I'm frustrated that, there are people, 10 years my junior who figured out where I'm at much faster. Like, the path I had to choose was the path for me. I have to say that coding is the thing that I enjoy most now, after like literally avoiding it for my, most of my adult life, and knowing many people who have done it, and really being envious of people who like decided to go to school for computer science straight out of, after high school. But I took, the path I had to take was the path I had to take. Could things have been done differently? Yes. I think each time you kind of have those moments where you're like, I wish I would have done this. These are things that aren't possible. So maybe all of the, because I do have those moments. I'm human. Maybe that's like accumulatively like the biggest waste of time in this journey, because I do struggle with that all the time. But I think it's important, as this is an aspiring game developer panel, it is definitely a marathon. So I think it's really important not to like look at someone else's journey and just like give yourself the latitude that you need to like appreciate what you're doing and the effort that you're putting in. It's really important. When I started game development, all I had was $500. I had no skills. I had an idea. I posted on a forum to see if anybody wanted to take me up on that, and like I did like some crude cutout drawings, and like that was my first project. And now like I have a game that's on like Steam and Switch, and I'm making my second one, and if I keep going, I'll even have more. So I'm kind of like running, I think I'm on a little bit of a tangent, but I think the important part is like, I guess I just don't really like that phrase, because I feel like a lot of people, especially in the indie space, that's like not at a small company that has, like structure. I think it can be really difficult to deal with that feeling of wasted time. So I think this is a term that we should actually stare away from, because it's a whether you're corporate, whether you're indie, whether you're on your own, it's a hard job. And we're like Ricky mentioned, we all want to grow, and I think it's important to like really treasure everything we do, even those things that we wish that we could have done differently. So that's my answer to that question, which is maybe not so much of an answer to the question, but I feel very strongly about the term wasted time when it comes to like our journeys in game development.
It's a great answer. And in a way, I'm asking these questions to prompt. Again, this is an advice panel, so I'm doing it to prompt something from you. So that's a great response. Yeah, if you want to reject the entire premise, I think that's perfect. That said, I'm going to give my answer and then go to Ricky. I did pitch this question to my wife, and she immediately shouted back, Facebook advertising was a waste of time. So I stand by for a couple. Ricardo, again, you had the wandering journey too. Do you feel like any of that was a waste?
No. I think every decision that I took, I then did in my life, at the end brought me here in this moment, and I'm happy with the situation where I am right now. I have my own company. I'm the co-founder of a company. Our game looks beautiful, and I love the game that we are doing. I'm in a panel in PAX, PAX Rising Online. I mean, yeah, I could be billionaire, but life. No one knows what you can do. Maybe tomorrow I can even die. So to be honest, I'm more than happy with what I have, and every decision brought me here. So maybe it's too philosophical, but I think it's the right way to take it.
No, I think that is good, because I think, again, a lot of people might be thinking to themselves, someone might be 16 listening to this, because we've got some people in the audience, but also it'll get podcasted later. Some people will be 16 and will be thinking, oh, I'll do this. I'll make sure I take physics and art, and I'll make sure I go into university and take this degree. And like, that's their point of view. And they have this very linear approach. But someone also might be like 35 and thinking, I blew my chance and there's no point, and I've wasted this opportunity. And it's interesting that every single one of us fundamentally has this journey of not doing games and then coming to it and all wanting to be doing it, but not seeing that looping path, that indirect path, as being a waste at all.
Yeah, I was 30 when I finally got into the industry. So, age shouldn't get in the way at all. It's, and also, I know this is not, you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to say it anyway. As an ex-teacher, and also now somebody in the industry and talking to a lot of people who do hiring, experience is the most valuable thing, more so than any degree. And actually, more and more these days, programs are being developed that are degree level apprenticeships. And I did a bit of research before this. There are quite a few in game design and other things in the game industry. And I think that it's really important that young people look for alternate routes, because uni doesn't suit everybody, right? It's a particular style of learning. Not everybody works that way. And a lot of people who go into the games industry are very creative, hands-on, like to learn as we go. And things like degree level apprenticeships or internships, unpaid or paid, like those sorts of things are so valuable. And young people should definitely keep an eye out on those, as well as things like university as other routes, in my opinion. There you go. Sorry, interruption.
No, I think that's great advice. I can't help but wonder if the era of, the bachelor's degree being the silver bullet and sort of establishing that you're the sort of person who has this set of skills and this sort of work ethic and maybe this level of intelligence, I think that might be past, and we're more into like a show me what you got age.
Yeah, I agree.
I wanted to end on this, but I want to make sure we have time for it. And then I'll loop back, and if there's any questions in main stage chat, I'll get to them. We got a question of, do you ever get creative block? And I'm going to answer that. And how do you get past it was also in there. My question for the panel is going to be like, if you could have one piece of advice, just straight up, one thing you think would be helpful for people, what is it? And I'm going to open creative block and burnout and everything. That is actually, for me, the biggest obstacle I had to realizing my dream. I didn't want to just work in the industry. I'm a creative person, and so I wanted to be making the story and making the gameplay. And I had tried many times to start up a company and failed several times because burnout would always hit me, or I'd get stuck on something and some sort of block would come up. And I had a completely unexpected, and at the time I did not know it was life-changing, but I had an experience where I heard about this idea called don't break the chain, which for me is exactly what I needed to hear. And this ties into what Tristan was saying about game development being a marathon. And it is. It's a marathon of marathons, all daisy chained together. And this idea of don't break the chain, which is, let's say you want to get good at drawing. Then you get yourself a sketchbook and a calendar. And on today's date, you get that ready, you open your sketchbook, you put one line down, and you can check today's date. You've practiced drawing today. And if you want to go for more than one line, then you keep drawing. But all you have to do is one line. And you do it again tomorrow, and you do it again the next day, and you never stop. And that sort of trained me into this marathon type of mindset of, you don't do it only when you feel like it or only when you feel motivated. You do it every day, no matter what, even if you can only do it for 1 second. So for me, it was, again, learning a lot of the skills, because I had programming skill and I had graphic design skills, but they weren't game specific. So I had to translate them into that. And that took time, but I was able to do it. And I did this don't break the chain thing. And my first chain was 7 days long. And then my second chain was 1,000 days long. And after that, I finally decided, it's like, okay, I don't think I need this tool anymore. But for me, that was the tool I needed to change my approach, because I was used to doing smaller level projects where you can power through in like 3 months and then you're done. Creative block is exactly the same way. How do you get over creative block? You sit down and you work whether or not you feel like it. You just start, because about 80% of the problem is just starting. And if you can just, again, if you're creatively blocked as a writer, then you open the page and you write down the words, I am stuck. And you just you give yourself the opportunity to write another one. If you don't open the book, the block is 100 times harder to overcome. That would be the one piece of advice I would give, and that would be my solution for creative block. Tristan, you're up. One piece of advice.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly piggyback on that. I can co-sign that advice. There were times where I didn't want to work on my first game for months, and I bargained with myself saying, even if you only make one sprite today, your game is one sprite closer to being finished. The difference between 0 and 1 is immense. You can live off of, I don't know, one really beefy meal a day versus 0, you will die. And I think this is the same with creativity and motivation. You need to nourish it, foster it, appreciate it. But my one bit of advice would be, if you are serious about being a game developer, I think it's one of the things where you have to do it because you love it. If you don't really love games, like maybe you don't need to eat, sleep, or breathe them, but this would be helpful. I think you should really think hard about if this is the industry for you, because there are like a lot, in terms of like making money, and sometimes game development is a lot of wearing different hats and like, doing it for the love. There are a lot, you could work at a big AAA company that pays a ton or whatever. But I think if you want to be in this industry, you should really, really love it, because I think that's the beauty in it. We make things that are creative, that players want to connect with, and when you are in a larger team, you're creating a collective vision. And I think it's really important, part of the recipe, to really just love what you do and love making games, because it's not like, I don't know, building web storage or working at Dropbox or some other kind of super technical company that like provides a service. You are providing experiences for people who will possibly remember them for years to come. And it is grueling work, but if that's the kind of thing that you love, this is the industry for you.
And so you also found that time, and I think this is true for all of us, to tie into your point, that meandering time where you weren't explicitly doing exactly what you wanted. That was all, in the end, affirming for the choice you finally made, right?
I think this ties into what I was just saying. If you had asked me at any point in my life, what is the one thing I'd want to accomplish before I leave this planet, it would be making a game. So I could never regret the time or, any of the experiences I've had to get here. It is what I wanted to do. And I feel like that's the kind of love that it takes to really like reach the top peak of your game developer potential, to be really honest.
Nice. All right, Ricardo, one piece of advice.
Do it at your best, and if you have to fail, but at least you did your best. It doesn't matter how many times you're gonna fail, because you're gonna fail in your life. Everyone is failing, but do with all 100% of yourself, and be always sure that you are taking as much time as you need to do whatever you want to. Because of course we spoke before about regrets. You shouldn't have regrets, but it's always the best possible thing is if you give yourself every time to what you do. And as I said, and if you need to fail is not a problem. No one is gonna kill you.
To summarize that, you're basically saying don't let fear of failure factor into your decision at all.
Yes, also. Yeah, definitely. And also because when we fail, we learn something every day. So as we said before, every time we do something, we are learning. We need to do different things. We need to wear different hats, whatever. So learning is the most important part of our life in general. So if you need to fail, don't be afraid of fail, as you said, but also take the failure not as a failure in itself, but as a one step more to your success or to your next success.
Sweet. And it makes me think of someone like Steve Jobs, who I don't regard as a hero, but I do regard him as successful. And he lost his company for like a decade in the middle there. And like, if the story ends at that point, you'd be like, oh, he failed and it all ended. And in like the post iPod world now, like people barely even remember that anymore. And like, that can only be regarded as like just an absolute disaster. But again, if you don't stop, the story keeps going, and it's not really a loss anymore.
Yeah, as you said before, is a marathon. In general, is a marathon. So you don't need to be the first in the first kilometer. You need to be the first in the last kilometer.
All right, there is I think, kind of a facetious question, but we'll go for it. I'll just try to summarize it. Does the games industry need, quote, ideas guys, or the sort of people who can get someone else to do the art, and they're just sort of pitching the idea and they get other people to finish the work? Is that in demand? Sadie?
Okay, so you have to be a little bit more specific, obviously, but there are so many roles in this industry that I am like a firm believer that if you love games and you are passionate about it, you will be able to find something that you want to do. But you have to be willing to put the work in. Like I said, I was a teacher. People always talk about how much work teachers get and how hard it is. But let me tell you this. I have never met a more hardworking bunch of people than game devs. And ever. I've got family who are builders that work 14-hour days. Game devs are so passionate about what they do. They work so hard. And if you're not willing to put that level of work and passion in, whatever area it is, you're not going to succeed. And kind of, because I didn't say sort of my advice, but it would be related to this, is that don't be afraid to take a sideways step. You don't always have to be moving forward. Explore all the options that are put in front of you. Because as we all said earlier, we all tried different things and ended up where we are. You've got to be willing to do that. And as you're doing it, as you take all of your journey from wherever you are right now listening, if you want to get into games, one of the most important things is building your portfolio, whatever you do, not just artists, writers, people who are in the marketing industry, people who want to do testing, all sorts of things. Build a portfolio of evidence of things that you've done that you are really proud of. And if you haven't got anything, go and get them, because you will not get into the industry without that experience. Go to as many game jams as you can and have fun with those. Go to as many of these sorts of events and learn from people that are doing them. and find the opportunities, because they are out there and you can find them.
Yeah, and thanks for covering for me. I forgot to get your one piece of advice, and it was
That's
a
all
good
right.
one. Okay, we have one more, and Sadie, this one might be mostly for you. One person asked just basically, did having a disability make it more difficult to get into the games industry?
Yes, I won't lie. Yes, massively. I don't have the luxury of being able to move to a studio and work there. What Ricky said earlier is absolutely true. It is much easier to get a job if you are where the jobs are. Being disabled, couldn't do that. A lot of places, even if I could do, are in inaccessible buildings that don't have lifts and upstairs and things like that. There are so many obstacles that people don't even think about that are in the way. But if you are passionate about it, you will be able to do it. If I can do it, and my disability, I'm in an electronic wheelchair, I have chronic pain, I have chronic fatigue syndrome, and I'm still a marketing and community director for a game studio. If I can do it, you can do it. And if you are disabled, whatever it is, and you want to talk, my DMs are always open. I'm more than happy to help. One of my biggest passions is getting more disabled representation in the industry, both behind the scenes and in the games that we're playing. So very passionate about that. And if you want to talk more about it, I'm more than happy to do so.
And we're pretty much at the end. I did want to summarize one last point that, again, Sadie really hammered home at the end, and I think ties in with the theme of everything we've been saying. Do something instead of nothing, basically. Get really good at something, like have something to offer, and then make it available. And that's what Ricky's talking about, where it's like, if they need you to move, then you just say yes, if you can, right? And if you can't, that's going to work against you. But you need to have enough things going your way to get over the hurdle of getting hired and getting into the industry and getting your things growing. And it's all just going to come down to like, do something that brings something. And there's actually a huge amount of flexibility in what that is. Again, if all you like to do all day is draw, guess what? There's something for you. If all you like to do all day is talk on Twitter, there's literally a job for that. But you have to do your time. There's no way around it.
The thing is, though, is that like if you, which you should, like we've already covered, if you love this, it doesn't feel like work when you're doing that. It's, especially, if you're an artist, you doodle for fun. So now you're just doodling on theme for fun. Like it's something you love. It shouldn't feel like a slog at all. And if it does feel like a slog getting that experience, then maybe this isn't the industry for you. And that's okay too. Again, whatever you are supposed to do, find it. Take whatever steps sideways, backwards, forwards you need to do. You can do it. If I got here, you can definitely.
That's our time. Thanks for coming out and putting up with my questions and sharing everything you guys have learned on your journeys.
That's been great.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah,
Thanks to you guys. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.